first criminal prosecution of a U.S. president is now underway in New York. Donald Trump is on trial in the so-called hush money case, accused of falsifying business records to cover up an extramarital affair during the 2016 election campaign. This is one of 4 criminal trials Trump faces, but potentially the only one to happen before the next election this fall. CBC's Chris Reyes is outside the Manhattan courthouse with more.
Proceedings have been underway since 10 o'clock this morning. Today is the start of the jury selection process, but it seems that Justice Juan Merchan, who is presiding over this case, has been dealing with some requests from Trump's defense team, including a filed motion for the justice to recuse himself because of a conflict of interest, citing that the judge's daughter worked for a firm that worked with Democratic candidates. Trump's defense team also asked that Trump skip a day, May 17, to attend his son's graduation. And there's been some discussion over what evidence can be used and presented to the jury. Now, during this entire proceeding, Trump will mostly be speaking through his lawyers, but that has not stopped him from speaking to cameras as he goes inside, and that's exactly what we saw this morning. Have a listen to what he said.
Nothing like this has ever happened before. There's never been anything like it. Every legal scholar said this case is nonsense. It should never have been brought. It doesn't deserve anything like this. There is no case, and they've said it. People that don't necessarily follow or like Donald Trump said this is an outrage that this case was brought. This is political persecution. This is a persecution like never before. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And again, it's a case that should have never been brought. It's an assault on America.
Now, there is a limited gag order on the former U.S. president in that he's not allowed to talk about any of the staff involved in these proceedings or any of the witnesses or their families. However, he's free to make those comments that he made outside of that the courtroom this morning. And we've seen that before because he's stood trial here in New York in recent months for a couple of civil cases, and he spoke to cameras at every opportunity. Today is the first day, Deanna, and many more weeks to go.
Chris, you were telling us about the kind of scrutiny placed on the judge, on Justice Juan Merchan right now, whether there's a potential conflict of interest of him presiding over this case. There's also going to be scrutiny on the jury as jury selection is taking place right now as they try to find, I guess, that fabled person in the U.S. Who is doesn't necessarily not know anything about this court case, but is not going to be biased, will be listening with an open mind. Tell us about that process that I think is so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in many ways, Deanna, this court case is beginning like any other criminal court case in this country with the jury selection process. But as you mentioned, what makes this different is the fact that there is a former U.S. president in that courtroom. And that's a major consideration as lawyers from both sides, as well as the judge, try to assemble a jury of Trump's peers. 12 people in total, including 6 alternate jurors. And at the heart of that process will be a 42-question questionnaire that each potential juror will have to answer. And some of those questions include whether they've attended a Trump rally in the past, what kind of media they consume, whether they are supporters of any far extreme right groups like the Proud Boys. However, the judge has ruled that the lawyers on either side will not be able to ask the potential jurors whether they are a Democrat or a Republican and who they voted for in the last election. They'll also have a limited opportunities to either object to a juror or to strike them out of the pool altogether. But again, as you mentioned, the toughest part of this process is to assemble that jury that will have to take an oath that they will be fair and they will be impartial, that they'll set aside their opinions, they'll consider the facts and the evidence. I asked some of the demonstrators that have surrounded this courtroom this morning, they're at a park just across the street, about whether they feel Trump will be able to have a fair trial. Have a listen to what they told me.
Welcome to the most corrupt city in the world. You know, once they took down the Italian mafia, the DAs and the judges became the new mafia. So, they found people, they found district attorneys and they found judges willing to do this to Donald Trump, a sitting, a former president and a future president. So, I'm not really surprised that they're doing it, but like I said, it's not going to hurt. I don't think Trump's really upset about it because he knows that all they're doing is helping us go up in the polls and support for Donald Trump.
So really, can he get a fair trial? It depends on who you ask here in the streets of New York, Deanna. As I mentioned, this trial essentially begins today. What makes it different from the civil cases that Donald Trump has been a part of is that as a defendant, he is required to be here every single day, 4 days a week. This court will be in session, and it's expected to last 2 months.
That's CBC's Chris Reyes in New York.